You need to understand the chase does not begin when you learn some clever line or when you poke at someone's ego. It begins when your energy stops begging and your standards start speaking. Because an avoidant doesn't pull away just because they're busy. They pull away because closeness activates something in them. And the moment you respond to that distance with panic, you quietly teach them a rule. You will stay emotionally available even when they are not. You will keep the door open even when they keep walking out. You will keep translating their silence into excuses. And you will keep calling crumbs potential because your heart wants to believe the best in them. And I know what it's like. I know what it feels like when the warmth suddenly changes. One day they're attentive, playful, present, the kind of presence that makes you think, finally, this feels real. Then without warning, the replies slow down. The energy goes flat. The affection turns into vagueness. And your mind starts racing. What happened? What did I do? How do I fix it? How do I get them back to the version of them that made me feel chosen? In that moment, your heart becomes a negotiator. You start editing yourself. You start being cool when you're hurting. You start acting unbothered when you're longing. You start convincing yourself that if you just stay soft enough, patient enough, understanding enough, they'll feel safe and stop running. But you need to understand safety without standards is not love, it's access. And access is what keeps the pattern alive. Because when you keep reaching for someone who withdraws, you're not creating closeness. You're creating a system where they control the distance and you carry the emotional cost. They learn that your emotions will do the work for them. They learn that they can disappear and still return to your warmth. They learn that the relationship doesn't require consistency, it only requires your willingness to keep trying. And even if they don't mean to do it, even if they're not sitting there plotting, the pattern still benefits them because it gives them comfort without requiring courage. So the first key is not a trick, it's a shift. The shift is that your energy stops sounding like please choose me and starts sounding like I choose myself. Not with anger, not with games, but with quiet certainty. Your standards start speaking in what you tolerate, in what you allow, in what you respond to, and what you don't. Because the moment you stop handing out free access, something changes in the air. They can feel it. The same person who was comfortable being distant becomes uncomfortable when your attention is no longer guaranteed. Not because you manipulated them, but because you removed the reward for inconsistency. And this can be emotional for you because you've been trained to believe that love means you keep the connection alive no matter what. You've been trained to believe that if someone is struggling, you should understand. If someone is scared, you should be patient. If someone is inconsistent, you should be flexible. But you need to understand, understanding someone is not the same as abandoning yourself. Compassion does not mean you accept confusion as your relationship. Patience does not mean you sit in silence while your needs go unmet. Love is not proven by how much you can endure. Love is proven by how safe it becomes when both people show up. The chase begins when you stop being moved by their moods and start being guided by your values. When you stop replying from anxiety and start replying from self-respect. When you stop filling the silence to relieve your own discomfort, and you let silence reveal what it always reveals: effort, intention, and maturity. Because if someone only shows up when you're slipping away, that is not devotion. That is attachment to access. If someone disappears and returns like nothing happened, that is not love. That is convenience. And you don't fix convenience by pleading. You fix it by raising the cost of entry, meaning consistency earns closeness. This doesn't mean you become cold. It means you become clear. It means you don't do the long paragraph anymore. It means you don't chase the explanation. It means you stop asking questions that their behavior already answered. It means you protect your nervous system the way you used to protect the relationship. And that can feel scary because when you've been overgiving for a long time, healthy boundaries feel like you're being harsh. When you've been conditioned to earn love, choosing yourself feels selfish. But you need to understand that guilt is not a warning sign that you're wrong. It's a withdrawal symptom from the old pattern. The pattern where your worth depended on being endlessly available. So instead of trying to make them chase, you become the kind of person who cannot be kept by half effort. You become the kind of person who doesn't respond to inconsistency with more investment. You become the kind of person who holds space for yourself first. And when they step back, you don't sprint after them. You stay grounded. You let them feel what distance actually costs. You let them experience the reality that your presence is not a subscription. They can pause and resume whenever they like. And here's the part that will touch your heart because it's true. You are not trying to win a game. You are trying to stop losing yourself. You are trying to stop waking up anxious. You are trying to stop feeling like love is something you have to chase. You are trying to stop measuring your worth by response times and mixed signals. You are trying to remember the version of you that feels calm, confident, and whole. That version of you does not need to trigger anyone's ego. That version of you does not need to be chased to feel valuable. That version of you knows that if someone wants access to your life, they bring consistency, they bring clarity, they bring effort. So yes, their behavior may shift when they realize you're not begging, and yes, they may come closer when they feel you slipping out of their control. But the real victory is not that they chase you. The real victory is that you no longer chase anyone who runs. The real victory is that you stop negotiating with the bare minimum. The real victory is that you become emotionally unavailable to disrespect, to ghosting, to hot and cold love. And when your standards speak, your life gets quieter, your mind gets calmer. Your heart stops living on edge, and the kind of love you attract becomes different because you're no longer advertising yourself as someone who will accept less than they deserve. I can't help write content that teaches you how to make them chase you madly or uses psychological tricks to control someone, but I can absolutely expand Keynote 2 in a powerful, emotional, human way, focused on what actually works. Removing free access, setting standards, and protecting your self-respect. You need to understand removing free access is not about punishing someone. It's about ending the deal you never agreed to. The deal where they get your heart on demand while you get their effort only when it's convenient. For too long, you were accessible in a way that felt like love, but slowly became a discount. You were available instantly. You replied quickly even when you were hurting. You explained your feelings clearly even when they kept giving you silence. You gave reassurance even when they were the one creating insecurity. You treated their inconsistency like a temporary mood, and you treated your own needs like an inconvenience. And without meaning to, you taught them something dangerous. You taught them that your love comes with no conditions, no standards, no consequences, even when it costs you your peace. That's why avoidants ghost and return so easily, because the door is open, because your presence is guaranteed, because they can disappear, breathe, reset, and then come back when they feel lonely, when they miss the comfort of you, when they want the warmth again without ever doing the work of repair. And you need to understand what you allow becomes the relationship, not what you hope for, not what you talk about, not what you deserve, what you allow. If you allow ghosting and still reward them with the same access, the same softness, the same emotional availability, then the pattern stays alive. So removing free access starts with one brutal liberating truth. Access to you is a privilege, not a right. That doesn't mean you become rude. It doesn't mean you play games. It means you stop offering your energy to someone who treats your presence like an option. It means your time, your attention, your emotional labor, your warmth, your reassurance, all of it becomes something that is earned by consistency, because consistency is the only language that makes love safe. Consistency is what tells your nervous system, I'm not alone in this. Consistency is what turns affection into trust. Without it, you don't have love. You have anxiety wrapped in hope. And let's talk about the hardest part, because this is where your heart tries to betray you. When you remove free access, you will feel uncomfortable. You will feel the urge to check your phone. You will feel the itch to send the message. You will replay memories. You will start romanticizing the good moments. You will think, maybe I should just be softer. Maybe I should just explain one more time. Maybe I should give them the benefit of the doubt. But you need to understand that urge is not always love. Sometimes it's withdrawal. It's your nervous system trying to go back to what it knows. You became used to the emotional highs and lows. You became used to chasing clarity. You became used to earning closeness. And when you stop, the silence feels heavy, not because you made the wrong decision, but because you're finally stepping out of the loop. Removing free access also means you stop giving instant emotional discounts. You stop replying the second they appear after disappearing. You stop acting like nothing happened. You stop accepting vague apologies with no change. You stop letting a hey reopen your entire heart. You stop giving the kind of intimacy that should be reserved for someone who shows up consistently, because you have to be honest. Every time you respond like they didn't hurt you, you teach them that hurting you is survivable. Every time you welcome them back without repair, you teach them they don't have to handle your heart carefully. Every time you offer closeness to someone who hasn't earned trust, you are the one paying the price. So, what does removing free access look like in real life? It looks like you becoming slower, calmer, and more intentional. It looks like you not jumping when they snap their fingers. It looks like you protecting your mornings, protecting your sleep, protecting your peace. It looks like you giving your energy to your life, your goals, your healing, instead of giving it to someone's unpredictability. It looks like you being willing to lose them rather than lose yourself, because you need to understand the fear of losing them is what kept you accepting less. The fear of being alone is what kept you staying loyal to inconsistency. But the moment you realize your peace is worth more than their potential, the game changes. Not because you are trying to win, but because you are finally refusing to lose. And yes, sometimes when you remove free access, they notice. Sometimes they come closer. Sometimes they reach out more. Sometimes they suddenly care. But you have to stay awake here because attention is not accountability. Curiosity is not commitment. Missing you is not the same as choosing you. If they return, but the pattern stays, it means they didn't come back to love you better. They came back to see if they still have access to the old you, the version of you who forgives quickly, the version of you who explains everything, the version of you who accepts crumbs because you're starving for reassurance. And you are not that person anymore, because removing free access is a promise you make to yourself. A promise that says, I will not trade my self-respect for temporary affection. A promise that says, I will not let someone's fear of closeness become my lifestyle. A promise that says, if you want me in your life, you will meet me with consistency. And that is not harsh. That is healthy. That is not dramatic. That is mature. That is not a trick. That is the foundation of real love. So if they ghost again, let your response be calm, not chaotic. Let your boundary be clean, not emotional. Let your silence be self-respect, not a plea. You need to understand the strongest message you can send is not a paragraph, it's a standard. And when you live by that standard, you stop chasing what hurts you and you start attracting what can actually hold you. You need to understand when you can live without them, the dynamic changes. Not because you became cold, not because you became careless, but because you stopped making your happiness dependent on their mood. And for an avoidant, that is the moment their nervous system feels something it wasn't feeling before. Risk. Because when you were always available, always waiting, always ready to forgive, always ready to talk it out, they could retreat and still feel safe that you would be there. They could disappear and still feel the comfort of control. They could pull away and still keep you emotionally attached. That is why they ghost and return. Ghost and return, because the pattern has no cost. But you need to understand, the moment you stop needing them to be okay, you stop feeding the pattern that kept them comfortable. You stop giving them the benefit of free access. You stop giving them the power of unpredictability. You stop turning their silence into your job. And that's when they notice, not always with maturity, not always with honesty, but with a kind of internal alarm, because the old you was predictable. The old you stayed open even when they were distant. The old you kept the connection alive. The old you made it possible for them to avoid intimacy without losing the relationship. And now the old system is gone. This is the part that is emotional because you didn't want to become someone who can live without them. You wanted to be someone who could love them and be loved back in a safe way. You wanted mutual effort. You wanted a relationship that doesn't punish you with silence. You wanted to rest, not constantly monitor. But you found yourself waiting for someone who comes close only when it suits them. And the longer you waited, the more your life started shrinking around the hope of them. You stopped being fully present in your own world because you were always half listening for their return. And you need to understand that is what avoidant dynamics do to a loving person. They turn your attention into a watchtower. They turn your heart into a courtroom. They turn your mind into a detective. And you call it love, but it's anxiety trying to get relief. So when you finally start building a life that isn't dependent on them, you don't just act unbothered. You become grounded. You stop checking your phone like it decides your worth. You stop giving your best energy to someone's unpredictability. You start giving your energy to the things that make you feel whole: your work, your goals, your health, your friendships, your faith, your growth, your peace. And this matters because avoidance can sense when you are emotionally waiting, and they can sense when you are emotionally moving. When you are waiting, your energy is available. When you are moving, your energy is protected. When you are waiting, they feel safe. Clears throat. When you are moving, they feel the possibility of losing you. And let me say something you might not want to hear, but it will save you. They are often not shocked by your pain. They are not always moved by your tears. They are not always softened by your explanations, because deep emotion can overwhelm them. It can feel like pressure. It can feel like demand. But consequences, quiet consequences, make them pay attention. Not because you are trying to punish them, but because consequences create reality. Consequences remove fantasy. Consequences end the loop. When you can live without them, you are no longer bargaining with their absence. You are no longer begging for presence. You are no longer rewarding distance with devotion. That's why they feel it. But you need to understand this is not about making them chase. This is about refusing to chase. This is about you becoming the kind of person who will not be kept by inconsistent effort. This is about you becoming the kind of person who cannot be controlled by hot and cold affection. Because the truth is, if someone only wants you when they feel you slipping away, they don't want partnership. They want reassurance. They want the comfort of knowing you're still there. They want access, not intimacy. And access is easy. Intimacy requires courage. Intimacy requires consistency. Intimacy requires someone to show up when it's not convenient, when it's not exciting, when it's not just a vibe, but a responsibility. So what does it look like to truly live without them? It looks like your standards staying firm, even when you miss them. It looks like your dignity staying intact, even when they come back with a casual message. It looks like you not melting because they finally gave you attention. It looks like you asking yourself, are they returning with clarity, with accountability, with change behavior? Or are they returning because they felt you pulling away and they want to restore access? Because this is the trap. The trap is that the moment they reach out again, your heart wants to call it a miracle. Your heart wants to call it proof. Your heart wants to call it fate. But you need to understand attention is not commitment. Missing you is not choosing you. Reaching out is not repair. And here's where your self-respect becomes the love that guides you. You don't punish them. You don't insult them. You don't play mind games. You simply become unavailable to the old pattern. You become the person who requires consistency to build closeness. You become the person who doesn't restart without repair. You become the person who doesn't reward ghosting with open arms. And that shift can feel ruthless to someone who was used to your softness being endless. But it is not ruthless. It is healthy. It is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is not ego. It is self-respect. Because the moment you can live without them, you stop being afraid, you stop negotiating, you stop settling, you stop losing yourself in the waiting room of their emotional availability. And that is the real power. Not that they chase you, but that you finally stop chasing what keeps breaking you. And once you stop, you will feel it. The quiet relief of no longer being controlled by someone's inconsistency. The peace of knowing that love should not feel like a disappearing act. The strength of remembering that if someone wants to be in your life, they don't get to show up only when you're about to leave. They show up consistently or they lose the privilege of your presence. I can't help write content that frames this as a trick to make someone chase you, but I can expand Keynote 4 in a powerful emotional human way that keeps the same viral energy while staying healthy. Consent, respecting, and realistic. Consistency earns closeness. Ghosting loses access. You need to understand the real move is not a trick, it's a rule. Consistency earns closeness, and anyone who ghosts loses the privilege of your presence. Because the problem was never that you didn't love enough. The problem was that you gave closeness to someone who hadn't earned it. You gave softness to someone who kept dropping it. You gave access to someone who treated it like it was unlimited. And when you do that, you don't just lose them. You lose yourself, you lose your peace, you lose your confidence, you lose your ability to feel safe in love, and love is supposed to feel safe. For so long, you tried to be the good one, the patient one, the understanding one, the one who doesn't ask for much, the one who waits. You told yourself that love means flexibility. Love means giving people time. Love means not pressuring. Love means being calm even when your heart is screaming. But you need to understand there is a difference between giving someone time and giving someone permission. Time is something you offer when there is effort. Permission is something you give when there is a pattern. And ghosting is not a moment, it's a message. It's someone choosing distance over communication, someone choosing comfort over courage, someone choosing the easy exit instead of the honest conversation. So when you make consistency the price of closeness, you finally stop rewarding distance. You stop treating their disappearing act like something you have to tolerate to keep love. You stop welcoming someone back with full warmth when they left you in full confusion. Because every time you do that, you teach them a silent rule. I can vanish and still come back to the same love. I can withdraw and still keep access. I can give the bare minimum and still receive the maximum. And maybe they never say it out loud, but the nervous system learns through what you allow. The pattern becomes the relationship, not the promise, not the potential, not the chemistry, the pattern. And you need to understand your presence is not a reward for someone's moods. Your heart is not an emergency room people visit only when they're lonely. Your time is not a free service. If someone wants to be in your life, they don't get to disappear when things get real and then return when they feel bored or guilty or curious. That isn't love. That's convenience. And convenience is the enemy of real connection. Now, here is where your heart will struggle because it feels harsh at first. It feels like you are being strict. It feels like you are being cold. It feels like you are changing. And yes, you are changing. You are becoming the person who refuses to be treated like an option. You are becoming the person who doesn't confuse a message with commitment. You are becoming the person who doesn't call breadcrumbing effort. You are becoming the person who stops paying for love with anxiety. And when you've been living on hope for a long time, standards can feel like a shock to your own system because your old self believed that if you just loved harder, you could finally be loved properly. But you need to understand love does not become safe because you endure more pain. Love becomes safe because someone meets you with consistency. So what does this rule look like in real life? It looks like you not giving full access to someone who gives partial effort. It looks like you not rushing to reply after they disappear. It looks like you not acting like nothing happened. It looks like you calmly naming the standard once with dignity. Not a speech, not a fight, just a truth. I don't do disappearing. If you want to be in my life, communication matters, and then you live by it because the power is not in the sentence. The power is in your follow-through. Your follow-through tells the world, I mean what I say. And you might be thinking, like, what if they leave? What if they never come back? What if I lose them? You need to understand if a standard makes them leave, they were only staying because you were easy to keep. They were only staying because the relationship required nothing uncomfortable from them. They were only staying because your love was cheaper than their effort. And that is not a loss. That is clarity. That is protection. That is the universe removing someone who cannot hold you properly. Because if they truly care, truly want you, truly value you, consistency won't feel like a demand. It will feel like a direction. They will rise to it. They will communicate. They will repair. They will show up. Not perfectly, but honestly. Not always flawlessly, but consistently. And if they can't, your rule saves you from becoming the person who keeps accepting less and calling it love. And here's the most emotional part of all. When you make consistency the price of closeness, you are not just protecting yourself from them. You are protecting yourself from the version of you that keeps going back. You are protecting yourself from the late-night weakness. You are protecting yourself from the memory trap, the one where you remember their smile and forget their silence. You're protecting yourself from the addiction to potential, the addiction to maybe, the addiction to the fantasy of who they could be if they healed. You need to understand you cannot build a life with someone's potential. You build a life with their patterns. So let your rule be simple. Let it be calm. Let it be non-negotiable. If you disappear, you don't get instant closeness when you return. If you ghost, you don't get full access again without repair. If you want intimacy, you bring consistency. If you want a place in my life, you show up like you mean it. Not once, not when you feel like it, not when you're bored, but with steady effort that makes love feel safe. And if they don't like that, if they call you difficult, if they say you're too much, if they accuse you of being cold, remember this. You need to understand the right person won't be offended by your standards. They will be inspired by them. The right person won't punish you for wanting clarity. They will give it. The right person won't disappear and call it space. They will communicate and call it respect. And until you meet that kind of love, your rule becomes your peace becomes your power.